going to start the Sangerville Board of Selectmen meeting, August 23rd, 2017. All the selectmen are present, along with the town manager. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, approval of the minutes, August 9, 2017. All seen them?
Motion approved.
Second.
Who's in favor? Unanimous. August 20th, we had a workshop regarding road work on the Sills Mills Road. Dale and I and Lois were the only ones present for that. Dale, you reviewed these minutes?
Yep.
I make a motion, we accept them?
Second.
One
Go
thing,
ahead.
and I wasn't there, but there's a typo.
No?
Oh, August 2nd,
Oh, it should be 20.
20th.
20th.
Wish you'd been there. All right, correction made.
Other than that,
You accept these? I vote yes. Good. Item 3, review of treasurer's warrants. Payroll numbers 138 and 137. Accounts payable numbers 135, 136, and 139.
Make a motion approved.
second.
In favor? Item 4, open session. Would anybody like to speak today? All right. Item 5, selectmen concerns. Anybody have anything?
No.
All good. Item 6, committee reports. Abby Fowler Committee.
I'll address the committee
All right.
first, if you don't mind. I'd like other members of the committee here, and I'd like them a chance to speak afterwards. But we met Monday at 6 o'clock. We met for a couple hours, and we didn't do we had an agenda, but we didn't even do our oath of office and stuff until after we got to the last item on the agenda, which was what the select board asked us to do, because we weren't clear on what we were supposed to do. So, with the town manager's help, we went through that. It's fair to say we were all surprised by the scope of the work, or the mission statement that you gave us. And that was one way to find an interested buyer in that building. I can't speak for the others. As for myself, I was thinking when the town manager asked me if I'd like to serve on this committee, that we would probably explore all the options for it and make out a good list of pros and cons of each. And as we're presently charged, we don't have the opportunity to do that, or I don't think that we do, without further authorization. But the result of this discussion, we felt like, even for the select board's sake, things like that, like the impact on the residential neighborhood for this or that, would safety would lie in numbers if it came from a committee to the select board to make a decision to present to the people. I think the select board would be on way safer ground than, we all have feelings about what ought to be done with it, but we really all ought to be fair and explore everything. And the other thing we really felt like is that it should be decided not at a special but at an annual town meeting, and after all the work and recommendations were done, the people will be presented with the clear options so that it'll put this thing to bed. It'll, and then lastly, we did do one thing you asked. We talked about impact in this area of different things. And we talked specifically about Mr. Howard's proposal, and that seemed to fit proper criteria. We haven't developed any criteria because we're not charged to do that, but it would be low impact as far as traffic, truck traffic, neighborhood noise, all that kind of stuff. And so we just started the discussion on which actually charged us with doing. I guess, and Brady was elected secretary, she has a copy of it. It's with her if you have any specific questions about what we covered. And I guess I would speak to this.
You guys can all look at them if you'd like.
So I just assume that others spoke to it, that were at the committee meeting.
That's all right.
Yeah, they're not finished. I just want to get a good look and say, okay, you're on the right track, or no, you don't need to do that, or why didn't you do this?
Yeah, that would be.
Should we?
I can send it to everybody.
Well, the question is whether do we want time.
You want to
I,
take time handing it around?
if you, do you want to address anything that Jerry has spoke to, well, you can make comments.
Well, I think the statement, the way my interpretation of what we asked you to do was very broad and very vague for the point of you guys, without holding anybody's hands up to get us to where we need to be. We didn't want for us to say, no, you could have to go to this or you have to go to that. But what I can tell you is I have had numerous phone calls from many people about that building, and every single one of them, the two things that I've been told, except for a very select few, is to get it out of the town's hands, which means the sale of the property, and to get it back on the tax roll. I haven't had anybody in the area to say a direction as a resident or as a neighbor what they want it to go into, but as far as general people in the town, that's what I've always heard. So I think that's part of why it was left very vague for you. It was not to steer you to, sell it to be used for this, or it has to be used for that, or what is the best option. And as far as rules are, I think we want you guys to come up with that. What is the criteria to get rid of that? Not us telling you how to do that.
The town has voted at town meetings beginning in 2009 to make it a green space, to tear it down and make a green space. And then in 2011, they voted to have the selectmen look into options for other ways to dispose of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe in 2012, don't quote me on this one, in 2012, it might have been voted again to demolish it. I won't guarantee that one because I didn't look at it very well. There were like 3 or 4 articles on the warrant. And that was our concern. If we put the cart before the horse and we do all this investigation as far as assessments and what will be the benefit to the town one way or the other, and we don't have the townspeople's permission to do that because there's been a mixed message since 2009, that we feel that maybe it would be better to present it to town, get a final definitive answer from the townspeople at town meeting, where there will be a lot of people there representing the population, that we would be much better, our time and the people that we need to get professional opinions from would be much better used if we have one direction to go in. And that's where we were coming from with that. It just makes more sense to not have to flit around from one place to another when it might be just tear it down. It might be what the people want. And if we have to go to the town at town meeting in March or April, whenever it's going to be, if we've spent all this time doing that, it just seems a waste, especially if we spend any money doing it.
That's kind of where we were coming from when we brought it up. We were, if we could get permission to sell it, then we could do the due diligence that you're trying to do now. In fact, Jerry's made the point that if we have a committee that can recommend a path, it really provides us with cover. Then we can say, not only did the three of us think that this is a good idea, we have a committee of X that also thinks that this is a viable idea. And I'm aware of those votes that you mentioned. I suspect that if we could present an idea that, assuming we're not dealing with crazy amounts of traffic or some big change in the neighborhood, if we could present an idea that was going to produce revenue in the form of property tax for decades to come, I think the town people would vote for it. Because more than green space, we need revenue. And one conversation I had, and I only reached out to him because I knew that he had shown some interest previously, was with Mr. Howard. And he has a much better eye for a structure like that and what you could do with it than I would have. I was quite surprised at how much value he put in that building. He said that it was viable, and that, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but to tear it down would be a waste. So if he sees it that way, I suspect other people in his field would see it that way. So I'm hopeful that if we can get to the right people, we might get some interest. Now, he was talking about capital improvements that might approach $1 million. If somebody did that, I don't know what the assessed value is going to be, but even if it's 50 cents on the dollar, that's a $10,000 property at our current mill rate. That would be a great thing for this town. So that's kind of what we're hoping. Now, I don't think everything's going to be easy, because you don't have permission to sell it, just like we didn't. But if you could get some people like Mr. Howard or other people, even Matthew mentioned the DOT at one time was actually eyeballing that spot for office space. So
Yeah, but that was if we
Renovated.
Right.
correct. If we renovated,
and I don't
then
think
there
we
is
want to be in
rental.
the property management business.
Correct.
No.
I don't think that would.
But that's kind of the idea. That's what you guys are basically doing. What we were going to take on if we could get permission to do it. So go ahead.
Well, I think we should start with, okay, what's it gonna cost to tear it down? Maybe some people who are really pro tearing the thing down are gonna go, it's gonna cost us what? Can we really?
I suspect it won't.
Also, we rented it for a time. I think we have some pretty good numbers on what that cost us and how far ahead we did not get. I think those numbers would be helpful to you, as well as looking at, gee, could we approach this company, this person, that, and we're just talking about the whole spectrum and putting it on the warrant in a annual town meeting. Do you want to, yes or no? Do you want to sell the building? Do you want to tear it? Do you want to tear it down? But then you could have multiple warrant
If you
articles.
could, for example, I will just stick with Brian because
Yeah,
he's the only name I
it's the name
know.
we know.
If you guys approached him and he were willing to talk to you and explain to you his his aspirations for that, and at the, between now and May, that all made sense. That might be an example of someone where, even though we don't have the authority to sell it to him, he might come up with a plan that we could at least get to the point where we could present an idea. And if that, that might be enough.
Does he still have an interest in the property?
He did. In fact, he said that, I guess he has a sizable crew, and this would be kind of a filler job for him. It'd be maybe a couple of years before this thing would be complete. And they'd fill in winters working up there, rehabbing that facility. And I don't, like I said, he was just really forthcoming, just told me kind of what he was, brainstorming up there. So I don't know that he would do it, but that's where, if I were on your committee, I'd call him and just say, hey, what were you thinking up there? And even if he doesn't want to do it, he might lead you to somebody else who would come in and talk to you.
I don't know how many of you have been through that building lately, but I know me and Tom was up there last summer and fallish. For the age of that building and the way it's been left the last few years, if you walk through it, you will be amazed. If you walk through that building and come out of it thinking it needs to be torn down, that thought will not enter your head. I mean, when you walk through it, the concrete's still all in good shape. It's not all cracked up. I mean, inside of that building is all cleaned. It's ready for a home. It's ready to be used for something. I don't think I think demolishing that building is a complete waste myself, personally.
But it doesn't mean we couldn't demolish it and make money. It might be the salvage value, you still might be able to sell the property. It's city water, sewer. The most important point, at least, I'm pretty sure that the other two board members would agree with me, is we need it to be on the tax rolls. That's, what it's, and obviously we don't want it to be something that doesn't fit, but that's where we're coming from.
Right, if you guys come up with the idea to tear it down, turn it all back into house lots, sell them off that way. I mean, there's all kinds of different avenues to go with that.
Yeah.
So we should rule out the possibility of a tax exempt place.
Doesn't really help us, does it?
And that's,
These are some of the guidelines that need to be established.
Now you might get a room full of people that say, I want another park up there. You might get that, and that they have a right to that view. I think if we have a viable idea, one that really could stand, and we can show people the revenue, I think more people would lean towards revenue. But I could be wrong.
There's more than just the tax base. I've talked with Tom about, it's called a TIF, it's tax increment financing. And if you put it in a TIF district, what happens is say it's valued right now at $250,000 and somebody comes in and remodels it and it's worth $1 million. That $750,000, if you put it in a TIF, becomes what they refer to as hidden from state valuations. So you would pay less than county tax because that amount is hidden. You would pay less to the school district. You would get more back from main revenue sharing. So and it lasts for 30 years. You can have a TIF district for up to 30 years. You still get the revenue from the tax, but it doesn't count towards your total valuation of the town. It's hidden valuation that doesn't go to the state.
So is the amount that then they would be taxed on would be $1 million?
Yep, they're taxed on the full value.
Only 250 would be
recognized by the state.
okay.
Lois, what is it? Tax?
Tax increment financing.
Increment.
It's a TIF.
Okay.
All right.
As far as
Affectionately known.
As far as you're concerned about a special meeting versus a town meeting, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
The only scenario I can imagine is if you had a pot buyer who said, I want to close by Christmas, then sure. But other than that, I don't know why you'd want to rush this. So.
We already tried to do that. I mean, not rush it,
Well, we
but
had
tried
a
to.
special, so
Right.
that's why I was on there.
Right.
It wasn't on there. Special wasn't per se because of that.
No,
No.
but
But our hope was if we got the authorization, that by next town meeting, we would have a package.
Right.
So
we would basically, our hope was for the town to say yes, which means you guys would be moving forward with a plan to make it happen.
And
Now
by
we're
plan, you mean a buyer?
Yes.
We soliciting buyers. We want somebody who wants to invest a little bit of money in this town. That would be great.
And to me, I don't think the value of the sale is as important as the end result. I mean, if you have something that's going to be viable for the town, for the community, they're willing to invest a large amount of money, I think that's the important part.
Capital improvement is the whole thing. If that property's worth $1 million, when they're done with it, it pays the town forever. So, but we're under no illusion it's going to be easy.
John, you're awful quiet.
All right, well, I'll say my, since I've been invited. I think it's still gonna come down to two things at town meeting or prior to that, like Chairman said, you know, if a hot buyer comes along and wants it immediately and is willing to conform to what we want up there, like Jerry mentioned, to fit in the neighborhood for a quiet entity, get it on the tax rolls. But like I said, I think eventually at town meeting, the annual town meeting, it's going to come up to either, we've talked about green space, we've talked about like a open exhibition building, we've talked with Brian Howard about the possibility of this assisted living center. There's been a number of things that have been going around and around in this building. But I think the bottom line is going to end up coming up, either it's going to be sold and put on the tax rolls with a good business up there, whatever we classify that to be, nice and quiet, or it's going to be torn down and be a green space. I think those are the only two answers that we're going to be looking at eventually. The only fly in the ointment, maybe a good one, would be if a buyer comes along that fits the parameters as to what we want, and we get them in there ASAP with a sale.
That's our goal.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to Brian. I'd love to see you guys coming back in 3 months saying, we need a special. He wants to roll on this thing.
We did talk about that with our aging population, and assisted living is a viable option to a nursing home because of the cost. That's probably a good fit for the
There's a
town.
lot of demand.
No, that's the employment factor.
That's right, I was just gonna say
I mean,
that.
we have a lot of citizens between here and Guilford right now that are traveling back and forth to work at Eastern Maine Medical Center and other medical facilities that, you know, would love to be able to live in Sangerville, work in Sangerville. Or,
Right.
So if we were to find a viable purchaser, are we still open to selling the building for a minimal amount and taking the tax benefits where we can? Or do we want to are we looking for something where they're going to buy it for, if the building is assessed at $250,000, which I don't know, are we looking to get $250,000, or could it be a minimal, like Guilford did recently with their school and the pizza place? They sold it to a person from Monson maybe, or Greenville. And they sold the school for $1 and the pizza place for $10,000, and they clumped them right together. And that's how they got rid of their school. They put them into tax earning entities,
correct.
not owned by the town anymore. So are we open to that as well? Are we open to minimal purchase price?
I would think we'd be open to anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
can't
I
imagine.
personally, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
If we could present to, I've had people say, well, no, you can't sell that for $1. Well, and on the face of it, it sounds crazy. Of course you can't sell it for $1. But if you sold it for $1 or $100 to someone who had a contractual agreement to do $1 million worth of capital improvements over the next 24 months, I think you'd have a pretty high turnout of positive votes for that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can make a scenario where selling it for next to nothing, people would support.
Guilford actually sold their old middle school off That when they sold that one, they sold that for $1, and then like the primary school, they just sold that for $1 as well.
Wow.
But the middle school.
Never
we
got
paid
paid for it.
for- Right, paid the for.
Nobody ever did anything.
No, they're still there. They
Oh.
still have it.
Oh.
Harris sold it
Harris.
after. Harris had it, then he sold it
Here's
to
that,
Harris.
yeah, right, gotcha.
Toby, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think we had expressed a concern because this building was surrounded by 4 roads and homes, both sides of each road, all the way around. It was a square. It was a concern that if we did find someone and their venture fell through or became something that they didn't want and decided to resell it to another concern, once it's out of the town's hands, then it gets to be something that the residents around that square may not want. And because we don't have parameters of anything that we don't know, we're not certain exactly what's going to go in there, so we can't seem to build parameters. And we don't really have a comprehensive plan in place. It could be an argument for tearing it down.
Could be. Could be. Jerry, from a planning board point of view, we don't have anything in terms of, you can't break that. How small a property could you make out of that piece up there?
Yeah, we have minimum lot size ordinance for newly created lots.
So you couldn't go below that. Could you create new driveways on those streets that Toby's referencing, or could we prohibit that in the sale?
The town could, yes.
Okay, so we could put encumbrances on this deed if we wanted to.
Of course, that's another option, is to remove that building and develop, say, 3 residential lots that would provide residential tax.
Sure. Sure. Yep.
See, to me, putting the encumbrances or having what the town would like to see is an advantage to anybody who would want to settle or buy that property. They wouldn't want to buy a property and then have the town come up with all kinds of restrictions or ordinances to make their business or whatever they're going to do there a hardship to them.
I don't think we could do it after the fact, anyway.
Excuse me?
We couldn't do it after the fact. If we wanted to, in other words.
Yes, that's true. We could make any kind of ordinance we wanted to after the fact. But what I'm saying is that it would limit us as a committee to find somebody, because the first thing they're going to ask is, well, what is the plan for Sangerville? What is the plan for this area? How is it zoned? How is it, are there any encumbering ordinances in place?
And I don't think they currently are there, Jerry?
No.
So if someone buys it under current rules, they're not, I don't see how that would be. For example, if we stick with the Howard analogy, if he ends up putting senior living space, that space turns into that, it seems like, I guess I don't see where that would be a conflict.
And then another thing to consider is if somebody does buy it for $1 and/or if someone buys it at fair market value or whatever that might be, does somebody who gets it for $1 get all these encumbrances because we want to, and somebody who buys it at fair market value, it's they've paid for it, they've paid what it's worth.
Yeah.
And then they have no restrictions
But
from us.
Once it's sold, it's just like every other piece of property in this town.
Yeah, we have no,
We don't have any control over any of these homes.
Right. I do have one more question, and that is how long or is there a time constraint to this search for a person or a business to settle in here. I mean, every year that goes by, the building doesn't get any better.
Oh, I would love to have a solution by town meeting.
Right.
For town meeting, that would be,
Okay, if we don't have a solution, if we don't have anything by then, I mean, how, you're talking 2 years, 3 years?
no, I think regardless, we have to have something for town meeting. I mean, that's the goal, right?
If we don't have something, but, I mean, what are we gonna do? Just,
I don't see why you shouldn't be able to have something between now and town meeting.
Well, and the other thing that could happen,
And not a thought process of what to use the process.
Sure, we
Process,
could
yes, we could do that.
apply or we're not.
Then that's different.
but
Correct.
we could very easily run that same question that we wanted to run at the special, at town meeting.
Correct.
Give the board the authority to sell that building, and we could have more specificity as to who you can sell it to. It can't be a nonprofit. It can't be chemical storage. You know, we'll have all of the things that everybody would be concerned about, and see if we can get enough votes to get the authority to sell it. And then, even if I got a feeling you could make money salvaging the building if we just wanted to go back to residential lots up there. Now, there's not a lot of people clamoring to
Right.
come to Sangerville and build a home in the middle of the town. I understand that, but if worst case, if that's what we do, that's what we do. I would like to think that that building could be utilized for something. When Brian explained to me, the trusses and the floor and the infrastructure that was there was real value there. It's just hard to believe that somebody couldn't do something with it, but maybe not.
The town of Guilford, Dan mentioned that they'd sold off their school. They also sold off the old high school
Yeah.
years ago. And a good reputable company bought it, but it's a messy business. Heavy equipment and
Sure.
trucks and all that's a messy business. And that's off on a side street. This is in the middle of our town. It's right behind our municipal offices.
Sure.
So what we do with it is important.
Correct, but once we've sold it, we'll just run with this. So it's elderly housing, and that doesn't work out. 8 years from now, it's up for sale. And competition for number all moves in there, and they're machining, and that's true with every building in this town.
It is.
Any building could be sold, because we don't really have any zoning per se. You can't have a farm, you can't have, remember, you can't have
Chickens. You can't have a rooster.
so many feet of a monument. But so I guess my point is, those risks exist with all the property that we have. And we'll just have to deal with it.
But for the initial sale, we bear responsibility to the town's.
Correct.
So.
Yep. No, we definitely would want to start out on the right foot.
I speak for myself, I can't speak for the committee, but I'd be willing to pursue it more, given expanded parameters. I was a little thrown off by that, to find an entity willing to financially invest in the property, make it tax generating and economically developed.
That's pretty vague.
Yeah,
I say-
You can't get an
our
open door
intention-
any more
yeah,
than that.
We thought it was quite broad, but I guess.
I mean,
Basically, we can tax it.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so I mean, even if you came to us with a church, we might be open-minded with it. No, but I'm just kidding. We just want it to be back on the tax rolls. That's all.
and find something that fits in the neighborhood. We have the same concerns that you're saying.
Right.
That's why it's up to you guys for that property, for where it is, figure out what would be the best use and how do we get there.
And if I hadn't talked to Brian, I wouldn't be nearly as encouraged that it was possible.
Yeah.
He just sounded so upbeat.
Well, I think establishing those parameters is probably the most important thing. I mean, a church could buy it. And you get, for $1, and you get $1.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
right,
So
that's right.
So that's probably not going to be one that we advance to the town meeting.
Right.
Yeah. So, as far as, I think that's where our committee has to start working and stuff like this, but we didn't know how broad
So if we should find somebody that wants to buy it, and we present that person to you guys. Is there someone in amongst your board, I know two of you probably can, look over the financials and find out if they're a viable company, if their business plan is reasonable, that can make some kind of determination whether they could go on more than a year or
Sure.
6 months or whatever?
We probably, the town would end up hiring
Okay.
an
Yeah,
expert
that
to do
was-
that.
So all we
Yeah,
really
that's
have
what
to
we-
do is find them.
Yeah, if you can
That's
find
all
someone
we
who's
have
got
to
real
do.
interest with a plan that you guys think it fits all the concerns that we have, please bring it to us.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard myself personally, and this is my opinion, I've heard 50,000 seems like different scenarios for that property. The only true fit I've ever heard is what Brian Howard wants to do. I'm not trying to persuade or anything, but I can think of,